Hello friends, I'm Dr. Kaustubh Bondre. We are here to discuss the analysis of today's important news or editorials from today's newspaper, 5th June, The Hindu. Before moving forwards, I request you to subscribe to this channel and like this video at the end. The first article that we discuss is about the issue of agrarian crisis that is going on in our country. First, what is the news? It is regarding the strike that the farmers, more than a federation of 130 farmers, have called. It's called Gao Bandh. Now, before moving forward to their demands, we need to understand that agriculture was considered very important right since the independence of the country. It was Jawaharlal Nehru who told us on the floor of parliament that everything else can wait but not Indian agriculture. Despite this, it is unfortunate that after so many years of independence, now also the farmers have to fight for their rights and basic rights. When we speak about agrarian crisis, it has two components. It is forward linkages and backward linkages. Backward linkages refer to the issues of seeds, irrigation, fertilizers, pesticides, and so on. The forward linkages refer to the issue of processing, transport, storage, marketing, and so on. This article is more skewed towards the forward linkages. Now, let us see what the issue is. The farmers are demanding that higher prices should be given. For first issue is minimum support price. So they, for examination, now the recent prelims 2018, there is a question on this MSP also. So you need to understand everything about MSP. What is minimum support price? Who declares it? What are the crops for which it is given? How much it is given? What is the formula that was suggested by MS Swaminathan Commission? So this committee or this commission's reports or recommendations you need to be thoroughly prepared for, even for mains. Next is they're demanding higher prices for milk procurement. They're demanding loan waivers. Now, loan waivers, as per economic survey, is called a moral hazard. So, if you give it, it sends out a very wrong message to the farmers to not repay back the loans and default. Now, you know what has happened to the banking sector of India because of this NPAs. Second, the next issue is about the supply glut. What is important to understand is the production has been increasing throughout the throughout the recent decade. And now what has happened is this year, the production is high. Even IMD has predicted a good monsoon. That means the supply of fruits and vegetables in the market is high. When the supply is high, the prices will decrease. Now we need to focus on this forward linkages. If you have to make the prices of agricultural commodities higher in the market and give farmers the profit on their investment, because of this supply glut, the farmers are protesting on the streets. Even the fishermen have joined them. Further, when we speak about agricultural unrest in the country, the case studies are given here, the incidences of firing and killings of the farmers, the issue of farmer suicides, then lack of tangible action on assurances that the government had made in the past, recent past. Now, all this has to be studied in the context of doubling of farmers' income and raising MSPs, the government's promise. Now, this rural distress demands structural reform agenda in agriculture, and these structural reforms, as I've said earlier, have to be done in backward as well as forward linkages. When we speak about forward linkages, the issue is about food processing, issue is about the storage of this produce, issue is about availability of platform for selling their produce. The issue of there's this APMC and the mandis. So very recently, government is taking baby steps in solving these problems. But we need a comprehensive reform in agricultural sector so that agriculture becomes profitable as a business for most of the community that is involved in it. Especially considering that one of the largest rural workforces, especially women, are engaged in agriculture. So here is a case study that how patchwork reforms that are done and or not done by the government results into rural distress. So after this article, we move to the second article. This article is regarding Spain and the political happenings in Spain. Now this article may not be very important, straightforward, right? But what is the takeaway? The keywords are the Catalan separatists. Now in 2018 prelims also there was a question on Catalonia, match the pairs. Second, we can see that Madrid had imposed direct rule over Catalonia last year after it declared itself independent. Now, this is, you see that what is happening in Spain. This political instability can be traced back to you can see here the banking and housing crisis earlier this decade in 2008-9, after the economic crisis in the world, there was a term that was very famous that was called pigs, pigs. So it referred to derogatory term was referring to Portugal, Italy, Spain, and Greece. These were the economies which were considered very fragile in southern Europe, and because of their fragile nature, this economic instability in these countries resulted into a lot of political instability. So double digit unemployment is present, and that is reflected globally. You can see a wave of anti-globalization, protectionism, and xenophobia that opposes immigration. This is the result of the economic crisis. This you can apply to the our own country also. Wherever economy is in strain, it reflects as social and political disturbances. So that is the reason why governments throughout the world always stress on economic growth and higher revenue generation, so that they can feed the social program and keep politically stable. So you can relate it that presently the prices of fuel are increasing, and it will have a political repercussion. uh, I would like to add that there is another angle to look at this issue also. That because all the countries of the world are focusing on economic growth, uh, you can economic growth only, what it results into is the fact that these countries and the governments are least concerned about the impact of this economic model on environment. So this growth is politically acceptable, this growth is socially also acceptable, but the problem is it is not viable economically, environmentally. It is affecting the environment. So the fuel for economic growth, or this push for economic growth, is having negative impact on environment, and that is not sustainable development. Coming back, currently healthy rate of growth in per capita GDP, then IMF has forecasted positive growth, and that is resulting into overall stability in Spain, political. But then you can see anti-immigrant and anti-European Union forces trying to gain a foothold. So this is what I was explaining. Next, the article that we see now is regarding it's continuation of our discussion, that environmental impacts of the growth model that we are following. Now, to cut a long story short, Kanak Mani Dikshit, this writer, has raised certain important issues in this article. What are the broad points? First, when we speak about rivers, when we speak about forests, when we speak about various species, all these do not respect political boundaries. All these are under tremendous pressure, especially in developing countries like and regions like South Asia. Being a largest country in South Asia and having largest population, it is imperative that India takes a leadership in solving these environmental issues which are particular or peculiar to this region. Writer is arguing that here India is falling short of this commitment. Various important points raised, we'll just see one by one. First, wildlife, disease vectors, aerosols, rivers. So these are the examples that they do not respect national boundaries. Second, India's position, prime position in this region is highlighted. Next, the writer has mentioned that wildlife corridors across states, provinces, and countries are becoming restricted. So overall, habitat is under tremendous pressure and biodiversity. UNEP has chosen India to be the host country to mark World Environment Day. Now, this is crucial, especially for prelims. Next, governments were content once. Now, this is the shift in thinking. Originally, all the governments were believing that environmental protection is synonymous with wildlife protection. But today we understand it goes much beyond it. Now we have to speak completely about biodiversity and ecosystem approach. Next, the writer has raised an issue of water in the subcontinent. We see that presently we have not worked on models where conservation of water will be followed by all the people. So the writer is highlighting that rivers and their right of way, these are the keywords, that right of way should be given to the rivers. What we do today, you see rivers in all cities, they have straightened, so the meandering nature of rivers is altered. Second, we dredge them, we put embankments, we put entire sewage of urban areas into the rivers, plastic is being deposited into the rivers. So because of all this, and various hydroelectric projects, diversion projects are implemented which affect the ecological flow of the rivers. Natural drainage is also destroyed by highways and railway tracks which are elevated. Floods we control floods, but there is a basic understanding that the ecologically sound ethos of living with the flood, that is being neglected. We are neglecting the importance of drip irrigation, plastics, exhaustion of underground aquifers. So these are all the issues that are raised by the author in this article for water conservation. Next, the writer also says that climate change has to be figured in when we speak about protecting the population and the environmental issues, especially when delta regions, these are the statistics that the deltas are very densely populated, especially in South Asia. The river basins and deltas and the coastal plains are the most populated regions. So climate change is going to affect these areas first, and a lot of population and their livelihoods are at stake. Another keyword is climate refugees. This you need to be prepared with. The case studies about Farakka, which had an impact on downstream. Uh, Another keyword is atmospheric brown cloud. Now, this is the haze and smog. Rather, this is the smog, which is because of human intervention, pollution. And this smog settles on Himalayas, the glaciers, and results into rapid melting of these glaciers. One associated concept I would like to discuss, it is called biological darkening. Because of deposition of such smog and dust on the glaciers, the temperature rises on the surface because the albedo is reduced and more sunlight is absorbed. This results in the growth of algae also, algae lichens, and then they themselves decrease the albedo and absorb more heat. So further speeding up the melting of the glaciers. So this is biological darkening, the concept. This is the explanation of this brown cloud. One unintended consequence of pollution, the Seet Lahar, that has been mentioned by the writer. Next keyword is environmental impact assessment, which also is present in your syllabus of mains. The concept of Chipko movement has been explained, and then the writer is arguing that presently we can't imagine that a Chipko movement would take place. Rather, the writer has highlighted that protection of this forests, this responsibility is falling on tribal communities. The economic growth model that we speak about benefits the middle class most. Because of this, I mean, they are the people who get jobs. Because of this, the middle class, urban middle class, is not visible in environmentalism, right? So the writer argues that at local levels, people have to participate and make the elected representatives in cities and districts accountable for implementation of environmentalism. So organic environmentalism should rise from the grassroots. So very important article that can be used in the mains and in answer writing in essays. The next article is an important one. It was an issue about the role of governor, or rather the justification of continuing with the post of governor. You know, the trigger was Karnataka elections. It is not just Karnataka, it was in Arunachal, it was in Uttarakhand and Tripura also. The point is, as the writer is rightfully arguing, we cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater. The point is, though there have been cases of abuse, political misuse of this position, constitutionally, this position is important. We need to focus on what are the articles in the constitution that relate to the role of governor. Second, the discretion of the governor. Third, the importance of governor in maintaining a federal system with a unitary character. And then the various recommendations of regarding governor of Sarkaria and MM Punchi Commission, various judgments of Supreme Court, for example, BP Singhal versus Union of India, and then we have this SR Bombay versus Union of India. Next, there are certain positive case studies. They have been highlighted here, that positive case studies where various political personalities which were appointed to this post, constitutionally a neutral post, did their job very nicely. So, in the conclusion, you can say that governor's post is important for maintaining effective communication between the center and state. And it is what is the need is it is to ensure proper checks and balances to streamline the functioning of this position rather than actually removing it altogether. So this is an important area from paper 2 GS point of view for mains. Next, a very important article. This is regarding food security, the concept of food security in the country. Now, the first keyword, we need to understand food security in all its dimensions, the basic definition of food security. Here, food security is interpreted on the basis of 4 pillars: access, or rather availability, access, utilization, and stability. Now, what is availability? This is a concept which used to be followed by Indian government in the initial years of independence. Basically, food security was considered to be a function of food production. So, after Green Revolution, India solved this problem of availability of food grains. But availability may be constrained by accessibility. So, accessibility may be physical accessibility, and second, affordability. So, that is economic. Through National Food Security Act and the PDS that we had, we solved the problem of access also up to much extent. Third is utilization. So after DBT, or where people get their due use of technology, this utilization problem is also being solved. Here, the contributory factor has been Swachh Bharat mission, because whatever the people eat, they should be able to get the nutrients out of it. Here, the role of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, clean drinking water, sanitation, hygiene, the wash campaign, all these are important and relevant. Now, the author here and this article argues for incorporating this fourth pillar called stability into the concept of food security. What do you mean by stability? The National Food Security Act, here it is mentioned that the Food Security Act is targeted to specific population. Recently in 2018 prelims, the question was asked regarding this also. And there is a concept called progressive realization of certain objectives. Now, the author is arguing, and this article says that when you give a gray area like progressive realization of certain targets, the governments, especially the state governments, are bound to drag their feet in implementation of these provisions. So, this should be taken care of. Second, I personally believe that universalization for food security should be the way forward, the way it was done in Tamil Nadu and Chhattisgarh. Third, when you discuss about stability, the point is, because of climate change, the extreme weather events have increased, disasters and hazards have increased, and the guarantee of food security is in question. So, this stability refers to the access to food of all population, even if there are natural hazards or disasters. So it makes government accountable. So stability of food supply is something that you should aim at, especially when we discuss in context of climate change. Other keywords here are the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. Now, these things you can quote in your answers as well as in your essays. Certain case studies are mentioned here about Bengal famine. Next, 74 World Food Conference, the definition of food security. Next, it was Supreme Court's judgment, which dramatically expanded the ambit of rights, right, making food security a part of Article 21. Then the research of Amartya Sen, which was regarding food security and access. So that is also mentioned here. 1996 World Food Summit, important point. Then 2001 case brought by the People's Union for Civil Liberties. The Supreme Court evolved right to food and read it into the right to life provisions of Constitution. Important point. Then this Act of 2013, these points I have already explained. It is largely silent on the issue of stability of food supply. So this is all we need to study. And when we speak about food security, it brings together diverse issues like inequality, food diversity, indigenous rights, environmental justice. So all these have to be figured in when we discuss the concept of food security. And we need a legislation regarding food security which incorporates the concerns associated with climate change and the instability of food supply in the legal framework. So after this article, we move to the next point. This point is again about a change, a paradigm shift in the understanding of how we deal with slums. From the point of view of examination, first, we need to define slums. We need to know the definition of slums as it is given by the government, one. Second, we know that the approach of government towards slums has changed. Initially, especially in 70s and 80s, slums were considered to be a blot on urban landscape. So, slum-free cities was the target. But then, through intervention of courts as well as civil society movements, we understood and the government took a stand that slums should not be, cities should not be slum-free. Rather, we need to look at rehabilitation of these slum areas. So, slum rehabilitation programs started coming up and in situ rehabilitation. So, we don't have to relocate the people from one area to another area because that is supposed to disrupt livelihoods. That is why the present approach of the government is we should rehabilitate the people in the same location, that is in situ rehabilitation. Now the case studies are mentioned here. This article is more about slum rehabilitation program in Tamil Nadu and its ill effects. So it is Delhi, Sabarmati, and then Hyderabad, river region. Especially the slums come up on the banks of rivers many a times. So that factor has been discussed here by the author. Author says that when people are relocated or rehabilitated also, if you do not rehabilitate them properly, what is affected is not only their livelihood, but also there is a social impact. A new urban geography of apartheid, that is the keyword that the author has given. Also a new urban untouchability, where specific areas are slum areas, and then those livelihoods, because they are affected, they get separated completely from the mainstream, economic mainstream of the city. And then what it gives rise to is political as well as social impact. Also, the author has highlighted through case studies that whenever the government says that rehabilitation has been done in integrated township, basically what we see is basic amenities have not been provided in these new areas. So, for example, no street lights, it has impact on safety of women and girls, then distance from the city, and then lack of commutation facilities, then childcare centers are absent, ICDS is not implemented, ration shops are not available. So here the case studies also mentioned what it results into, all the social ills and evils like child marriage, trafficking, kidnapping, abuse of alcohols, drugs, domestic abuse, theft, suicides, murders, broken livelihoods, economic stress, indebtedness. This is all because of overcrowding of these people, which are devoid of livelihood in these areas which lack basic amenities. That is the reason why there is a rethink needed on the rehabilitation of the slums, and they have to be done in a more humane manner, taking into consideration not only the social realities but also economic livelihood of these communities. The next article is about, again, federalism, but in the context of environment. We know that the government is gathering inputs from the states on proposed amendments to the Wildlife Protection Act. So first, for examination, you need to prepare this act, all the schedules, 6 schedules of this act. Next, what are the proposals that for amendment that has been brought in by the governments? Next, key points here are, this act protects not only vertebrates, invertebrates, but also plants, one. Second, the power of inclusion and exclusion lies exclusively with the center. Now, the basic argument of this article is this power of identifying species as endangered should remain not only with the central government, because when we have a definition of all the species criteria at pan-India level, it neglects the role of local communities, it neglects the existence or the pressure on various species at local level. For example, if we consider a particular species, say butterfly, throughout India, its level of protection may not be same. You cannot categorize it at pan-India level, because there may be certain pockets where it was endemic and now there is a lot of pressure because of local human activities on its survival or existence in that particular local region. So the article argues that rather than pan-India lists, we need to have or understand this concept of biodiversity and species protection at a local or regional level, where the participation of locals can also be incorporated in this environmental project. The case studies are mentioned here, crimson rose, striped hyenas, you can go through it. So the basic argument is why we need a pan-India list. Case studies mentioned about Andaman and Nicobar Islands, you can go through it, and then certain species are also mentioned. Just highlight them: Amboli toad or Indian flying fox, which is recently in news regarding the Nipah virus infection. Lastly, the article that we discussed today is regarding the protection of SCs, STs. The focus, the context is, recently there was a demand that SC/ST Act is being diluted. I mean, both sides were fiercely vociferous in their demands. So the people who are protected by SC/ST Act, they demand that the act has not been properly implemented. It has remained a paper tiger, and then the conviction rate is very low. The people who are on the other side, who generally the so-called upper castes, they argue that this act is being misused to target the specific people, personal animosity, and then this act is unnecessarily harsh. The last straw on the camel's back was the judgment of Supreme Court, which banned the immediate arrest of a person accused of insulting or injuring someone belonging to SC or ST. Now, basically, the problem is with prosecution and investigation and prosecution. It is true that the act is very harsh. Second, though it is very harsh, the crimes against Dalits and conviction rates have not increased. I mean, the crimes against Dalits have not decreased and the conviction rates have not increased. So, effectively, the act has remained as a paper tiger, and rather than its actual required use, the act is also being misused to settle personal scores. In this case, I believe that what is required is focus on proper investigation and prosecution so that conviction rate increases, the trials are conducted in time, and the cases of misuse are minimized. Now, apart from that, this article focuses on 2017 paper by Peter Mayers, The Better Angels of Their Natures. Now, this is a study which you can quote in answers in paper 2 and you can also quote in your essays. Basically, what the author or the paper author of this paper says is that he has found a positive correlation, significant correlation between crime rates against Dalits and overall murder rates across states. So basically, the basic argument is that the crime rates against Dalits have reduced. But what is it the result of? Is it result of constitutional protection or the SCST Act, or it is because overall crime rates in society have seen a decrease? Author finds that yes, the correlation is more with overall decrease in violent crimes in the society and not with just being a constitutional status or the SCST Act. The point here is when economy, right, better economy is, economy becomes strong, jobs are generated, livelihoods are given, the crime rate in the society goes down. So even if Dalits have not achieved equality in a caste stratified society, they have achieved significant steps towards empowerment. So the constitutional protection is in place, SCST Act is in place, reforms are required, but as a society, we need to progress economically also so that stable livelihood reduce overall violence in the society. With this, we complete the discussion on editorials and important articles in today's newspaper. I look forward to being in touch with you, and I have at the end I have included this question. You can think over it and post your answers in comment section after the video. The question is, intended benefits of the National Food Security Act may not be realized unless the impacts of climate change are integrated in the implementation of the act. Comment. So I request you to solve this as a practice and post your answers on the comment section. Thank you. Have a very nice day.